Welcome back, people of the Second Legacy. It is an amazing day. It is Wednesday, and we have got a show for you. I cannot wait to walk you through what we're about to show because, interestingly enough, when people have no protection provided by the state, they take it up themselves. And this is an amazing example coming out of a deep blue control state, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn that notification bell on. We would love to have you help the channel grow. Get out there and spread freedom everywhere, and thank you for that consideration. Now, the content today is brought to you by LAS Concealment. We're going to say a quick word from them, and then we're going to hit this. And the content today is brought to you by LAS Concealment. And if you're in the market for a holster for your favorite freedom tool, LAS Concealment is worth a look. They have everything that you could imagine, all molded from Kydex to your said freedom tool. Everything is fit directly to that model for a superior comfort and safety. They have inside and outside the waistband options, multiple designs, all sorts of different colors, and they are tested by the world's most elite special forces. Make sure you check it out. There's a link in the description box below, and thank you so much to LAS Concealment for making this content possible. All right, Tim. This is I think this one's gonna tickle your happy bone. This is gonna be good. I think you're gonna like this one.
Okay.
I don't even know what a happy bone is, but we're just gonna go with it. So, how are you, man?
I don't know if I can show my happy bone on the internet.
No, I don't think you can. But I was hoping we'd walk right past that and just kind of count that as that was dumb to say. Okay. Well, you know what? We're just gonna leave it in there and just show people that's what we do here at the Second Legacy.
This is my happy bone. My happy bone.
We just roll right there, of course, right on the elbow, right behind the weenus. So. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing.
Tim, let's get past the happy bones.
Yeah. Well, let's just move on. It's getting
let's
weird in
going.
here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's getting weird. Okay, I got you. Well, Tim, on a more masculine note,
Yes.
we're going to talk about armed citizens patrolling their areas to protect themselves, their families, and their properties. What do you think about this, Tim?
I think that's a perfectly fine constitutional activity. It's part of the reason why we have a Second Amendment. We are our own first responders. People have become way too reliant on public services. Public services that the Supreme Court has held has no obligation to protect you or your family. They have no obligation to respond. They have no obligation to do anything other than to show up and take a police report, and they may or may not do that afterwards. So, yeah, you're responsible for your own safety. I have no problem with that.
Okay. So I think we left some ambiguity there. How do you really feel? So, something I say on my channel a lot of the time is the police forces are kind of like HR departments. Now, of course, they do de-escalate emergency situations when they're there, but a majority of the time they come after the main infraction has occurred. A lot of the time they do, and sometimes that response time is slow. So you're putting a lot of energy, reliance, and weight on the state to come and help you, depending on what's going on in the area. But that's not what's happening here in Hartford, Connecticut, Tim, of all the places. Of all the freaking places.
Yeah.
So let's dive into this because I think this is fascinating. Mr. Producer, could you throw number 1 up? Armed citizens patrol considered to address gun violence in Hartford. Now, Tim, obviously, the first thing that stands out there, that's impossible because Hartford is in the middle of a gun control zone. A big one.
Deep blue, yes. Sadly, that's where the original Colt factory was, and now it's turned into this.
That doesn't make sense. It's not possible, Tim. There are so many laws.
Yeah.
So many laws. This has got to be an error.
Yes.
Must be.
It's a mistake.
It has to be. In fact, why would people even consider picking up arms themselves? Because they have a police force and all these gun control laws. On paper, this seems like a fool's errand, Tim.
Yes, they're perfectly safe. They've legislated themselves into safety. Apparently, it's not working though. I wonder why.
Yeah, that's weird. And it's something else that's kind of weird, Tim. Something else we've seen in times of crisis and in times of unrest. A lot of times, people who band together in groups with Second Amendment rights and defending themselves constitutionally, they tend to do pretty well and they protect themselves. I think of L.A. in the rooftop. I think they were called the Rooftop Koreans at the time.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Well,
I mean, that's another example.
Criminals are generally simple creatures, right? They like a lot of folks take the path of least resistance. If you're standing out there armed, chances are they're going to find another victim that isn't, because there's plenty of victims out there to be had thanks to, the laws we pass. So it's one of those things that is a strong deterrent. And, they'll cite all these statistics like, well, you're more likely to be killed in your home with a gun than you are to actually use it in self-defense. No, actually, the opposite is true, because there are millions of instances every year that go unreported where people produce a handgun in a threatening situation or a rifle, and then the threat goes away magically, as threats tend to do when they're met with equal force or greater force. So, you're being lied to by the media. Shocking.
No. No, Tim, you stop it. They would never lie to you.
No.
They are the most reliable, trustworthy news on. And get the weather, by the way, while you're in traffic.
Yes.
I mean, they are by far the most convenient, most trustworthy, and they would never put their propagandistic terms and goals ahead of your safety. No. Never.
No.
No.
It's all about
they're
saving
not
the
all
children.
owned by
Come
6 corporations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're not all owned by the same people. No, you are a conspiracy theorist. Let's continue so we don't get in more trouble. So this is number 2, Mr. Producer. Tim, did you know that addressing gun violence in Hartford with citizen armed patrols, that's what the local activist said community members are asking for. Quote, historically, oppressed people have taken up arms to protect themselves. As an African American, I don't see anything wrong with it, activist and gun owner Cornell Lewis said.
I have a question, though. Are they being oppressed or are they dealing with crime? I'm not sure which.
I mean, you know, I guess that actually depends on your interpretation of the word oppressed, because technically any type of oppression of any type, whether it be from a criminal, like kind of like the Magnificent Seven type situation, or a state overbearing on your rights. I mean, technically, I guess oppression doesn't really have to do with specifically who's doing it. I guess it's just the action, isn't it?
I guess. So if I steal your car, I'm oppressing you? Okay. I just wanted to get that clear, because words have meaning.
No, words are important. But zooming out from that one word, they have a point.
They do have a point.
I mean, like, people have taken up arms to protect themselves. That was the entire founding of our country.
Mm-hmm. And the whole purpose of the Second Amendment.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like they're, to be honest, onto something. Mm-hmm. But you know, Tim, we can't have this. We cannot have vigilante justice in a city of gun control laws, because that would imply that something's not working.
Yes. Put your guns down, citizens. We're here to help.
Exactly.
Lock yourselves in your house.
Nothing will go wrong.
Comply.
It's okay. Nothing will go wrong. That's right. Comply.
Yeah.
Compliance is the key. Now, speaking of words have meaning. But let's go to number 3, because this just keeps on getting more enticing to me. Lewis is helping coordinate a response to the recent gun violence in the city. We're patrolling the neighborhood, but we have guns because the Second Amendment says that if you have a license, you are allowed to carry one. Well, I mean, listen, I'm going to take it where I got it. Okay, let's just...
God bless him.
We're in Connecticut.
His intent's there. I mean, he means well, but
yes,
wow.
The intent is there. He got... It's a little mixed-mashed. I think, Tim, for the people of Second Legacy, I think they know what we're about to say. But I think for people who are new, we got to dive in here. The Second Amendment does not say if you have a license, you have the right to carry a firearm.
Matter of fact, what we commonly refer to as constitutional carry means no license required, because the Second Amendment is your license if you want a license. Now,
correct.
Second Amendment doesn't give you the right to keep and bear arms. It assures the right, guarantees the right.
Against the government infringing upon said rights.
Right.
You know, I think we need to set up camp on 2 important things here. First of all, I don't want to dog Lewis, because he's going the right direction.
Yes.
He's going the right direction. I think that's important. But at the same time, this also speaks to the level of mindset in blue states and blue bastions where gun control is a standard and a norm, because they've got him understanding that the Second Amendment says as long as you are licensed by the state, you can have this right.
Yeah.
And that is the furthest thing from the truth.
Right.
I mean, what this should have read is the Second Amendment gives us the right to bear these arms. The state is infringing upon us with a license requirement, but we're complying with that just so we can protect ourselves. That's the way that should have been read.
Yeah. And the unfortunate part of this is, you know, people that aren't in the know will read this article and go, well, see, need a license,
See, you need a license to be constitutional. No, you do not.
Nope.
You need a license to be compliant with a state level law, which is an infringing state, to say the least.
Yeah.
But like I said, to his credit, he is going the right way.
Yeah.
I mean, like...
he's taking a few side roads, but he's getting where he needs to go.
Yeah. He's taking the scenic route, but he is going the right direction.
Yeah.
But, you know, Tim, as we go into this, and then I got 2 more things for us. Zoom out a little bit. Like when we talk about these types of things, this speaks to something much larger than just, you know, we have a Second Amendment license or guaranteed right to have a license to have a gun. When you zoom out a little further than that, this kind of speaks to the reason why they're doing this. Yes, they may not be perfect on their nomenclature. They may not be perfect on their language. They may not be perfect on their understanding. But at the end of the day, they are connecting in a deep blue city, in a deep blue state, that self-reliance with your rights is going to be a better alternative than relying on the police who have failed you and the politicians who have failed you. That's really the big story here. It's
Right.
not the flashy Second Amendment patrols. It's the idea that the state residents are going, this isn't working.
Yep.
That's the big deal.
Yep. It's true. I also noticed in that last clip, if you will, not talking about a magazine, it says with response to recent gun violence.
Yeah.
Why does that phrase just grind my gears? It's
I
it's
think
not
it's 'cause
gun
you're a
violence.
curmudgeon.
Guns are incapable of acts of violence. If guns were the violent part, then we would just be able to go after the guns. But it's not the gun. It's the person attached to the gun. That's our problem.
Yeah.
It's not a gun problem. It's a people problem. And until we identify and recognize that and accept that and try to fix that, we're not going to fix anything. As long as we keep focusing on inanimate objects, we're going to continue to have problems.
Yeah. Well,
Drives me nuts.
Funny. I know it's okay. It grinds your gears. It's okay. It's because you're a cranky pants. Clearly, it's not because you're constitutionally inclined at all. So,
Yeah.
this is where it gets interesting, and I love when you set these things up prior. But let's dive into number 4 because this actually speaks to something you just hit on. Lewis is looking to coordinate armed patrols in Hartford consisting of citizens with legal guns. He has said some community members have requested this for an event next month, saying they have no confidence in the police to protect them. Quote, many of these people don't live in the community and the existential angst that we are involved in, he said. Criminal justice professor Mike Lawler of the University of New Haven said these civilian armed patrols come with legal risk. Okay, we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But this is the important part. Many of these people don't live in this community and they don't understand what we're dealing with. That's the disconnect between politicians and police presence in these communities that they're referencing. They don't even understand what they're dealing with. They're imposing rules on them, and then they're saying, "Well, you're bad if this isn't working for you." That's essentially what we're talking about right here.
Right.
And legal guns, Tim, that would imply illegal guns would be the problem, wouldn't it?
Seems to. That seems to be where they're going.
Because if you're fighting a problem with legal guns and you feel the need to say citizens consisting of legal guns, that would imply that criminals were consisting of illegal guns. In a gun control state, something doesn't jive, Tim. Something is up.
Yeah. But they like
Maybe
to
it's
throw
something-
those words. I mean, you don't know if that's the reporter saying that or somebody else because
No, of course,
they always
of
just love to
course.
throw little, things in articles like that. Like, of course, we're talking about legal guns here. Whatever.
Not the illegal ones that have a propensity to stand up and walk on their buttstocks and then do a little horizontal leveling action, fire their mechanisms, and then come right back down to the buttstock.
And the funny thing is it's kind of misleading as well because words have meaning. Illegal guns, really, is the gun illegal or is the person prohibited
Exactly.
that has it in their possession?
Exactly.
Because guns are not illegal. And so now there might be
Tim?
illegal guns out there the government doesn't want you to have, but generally those are guns you haven't paid your tax on. They're still legal. So
Which is
in the eyes of the
ultimately ironic. You see, you're gonna start us you're gonna start an NFA tangent right here. Like we're
I
having a
know.
nice day. We're just chilling in Hartford, Connecticut, and you're gonna bring in an NFA taxing scheme that imposes penalties and taxes on rights, which you can't do with voting in polls, but you can do with Second Amendment. Tim,
I know. Okay.
See what you did.
Stop. I know.
See what you did. You got me.
I tend to
You
lead
got
those
me.
conversations. I can't help it.
Oh man! But to be honest, you're right on all accounts. But now, Tim, you know what? I think we need to look at we need to take a pragmatic approach and look at all the consequences that could come from this, because we've got to have an opposing side here. Check this out. Number 5, Mr. Producer. Quote: "You have a duty to retreat if you can with complete safety. So this whole idea of going towards a problem and trying to break it up and using a gun is going to get you arrested if anybody gets hurt," Lawler said. He said police officers go through a lot of training in Connecticut on when to use firearms in volatile situations. There's no evidence that this citizens group has any training, and that's a recipe for disaster. Oh, professors and their silliness. Let's just, you know what? Let's take this piecemeal, Tim, because that was a big bite of delicious. You have a duty to retreat. Let's walk the people through duty to retreat. What's that mean, Tim?
Well, that's a stupid state law that requires you to flee from danger. Your first response can't be meeting violence with violence. You have to try to run. So if you're in your house and somebody kicks in the front door, you're supposed to try to bail out the back window and let the criminal have at your property and anybody else that might be in the building, because you have a duty to retreat. And if you defy that duty, now you can be charged criminally for assault or whatever they want to charge you with. So if you're in a room with no windows and you have a gun and somebody comes in the room, you have no place to retreat to, presumably under that law, you would then be justified in using deadly force. But in states like that, they generally frown upon the use of firearms or weapons in self-defense, and they're going to try to charge you with something anyway. That's the downside to living in an anti-gun state. You can't defend yourself. They're going to punish you if you try.
Yep. And you know what's interesting about that, while you were walking through that scenario? You have a zero chance of winning if you have a room with windows or another door behind you or anything. If there's family members in the room or in the house, you still have to get outside or legally, or you're in trouble. Even in your scenario where there's no windows, no doors, you're in a room trapped in a corner and you have a firearm and someone breaks in with the intent to harm you, your odds of successfully not getting charged are about 50-50 in that scenario. And that's without an overzealous prosecutor.
Right.
I mean, like, these duty to retreat laws, and Connecticut is not the only state that has them. A lot of blue states have them. They are so detrimental to anybody who wants to defend themselves. I mean, honestly, it would terrify me, because the criminals have roughshod over anything that they want. And if you do anything against them, they're just going to sue you and you're going to get arrested. It is backwards.
In free states like mine, Indiana, we have the exact opposite law in the books. It's called the Castle Doctrine. And then we have stand your ground. Those two combined allow you to defend yourself, use force to defend yourself. It doesn't have to be equal force. It just you can use force to defend yourself if you have a reason to believe that you are facing serious bodily harm, not necessarily death, but serious bodily harm or death. And also in my state, I can intervene in a situation to protect another person. So there's Good Samaritan laws too. So in free states, those are three types of laws that protect your right to self-defense and defense of others. And then you go to Connecticut, where they pass laws saying, we're going to charge you if you try to defend yourself. Just lay there and die, citizen. We'll begin to clean up the mess. Just pay your taxes before you go, please. Thank you. We'll leave a note. We'll leave an envelope in the mailbox.
You'll be invoiced.
It's so disgusting. And the fact that people applaud this stuff, people lobby for these types of laws. But I guarantee you, the people that want to support these types of laws, the minute they find themselves in a bad situation, they'll immediately change their minds, as they often do. But by that point, it's too late for everybody else, because these lunatics don't want you to defend yourself or others.
Exactly. Because the state will do it, Tim. And after all, even this professor said, the police officers go through a lot of training in Connecticut.
Do they?
A lot of it.
Do they?
Yes. Yes. And and nothing ever goes wrong.
I have several friends on police departments. And the first thing that they'll tell you in a private conversation is police are horribly undertrained. Many of the officers out there won't even pull their weapons from their holsters except once a year to qualify. The guns come out of those holsters rusty, unloaded, bad ammunition, because they don't take care of their weapons and they don't train and they don't go out on their own. Now, it's not saying all police are like that, but that is a good number of police out there. So this nonsense that, the police are highly trained, no, they're not. Most police departments don't have a budget to highly train their officers. When you get into small departments that have maybe 10 officers on the force, they don't have a budget. They don't even have a budget to buy guns. They'll make you have to go out and buy your own gun with your first paycheck. I mean, they don't have budgets for training. So this is nonsensical. It really is. The argument just doesn't hold water.
But none of them hold water. That's the entire point. None of these arguments hold water when they come at you and say, well, the police are well trained and, well, you're going to get arrested if anybody gets hurt. And you kind of just pause for a second and you go, okay, who's going to face any type of consequences if my family gets hurt because of your negligence on defunding the police department or underfunding the police department for some woke radical agenda that you want to score political points with because it guarantees your power? That never swings the other way.
Right.
I just find that so fascinating. It never goes the other way. But anyway, it really grinds my gears to use your verbiage. But man, it's just if I'm going to zoom out, I'm going to do my little recap on this story, Tim.
Yeah.
And obviously, I want to hear you on this as well. At some point, you zoom out and you look at the citizens of Hartford are openly deciding that the police aren't doing it. The politicians don't understand their problems. So they're taking it in their own hands. I applaud that. That's self-reliance. they're embracing their Second Amendment rights. I applaud that. That's self-reliance. That's something that's very American. Now, we can work on the Second Amendment, guaranteeing you a license to have the firearm, but we'll work on that. But then on the other side, you have the insane duty to retreat laws that are being highlighted and the specter of consequence just for defending themselves.
Yeah.
That's the way I mean, it really highlights the juxtaposition and, to be honest, dumbness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guy's not wrong when he say that there's considerable risk coming with this move on their part because the state wants to put that risk on you. See, I just had this conversation before this story broke a few days ago with some friends. We were eating lunch and we were talking about it. I said, one thing I really like to see more of is community policing. People taking it upon themselves to protect their own communities because we, again, are the first responders. When you live in a certain area, then when something bad happens in that area, you really need to take care of it. Now, the police are going to show up and maybe they'll catch a bad guy that may have fled or collect evidence. It may lead to something. But when it comes to dealing with violence or danger, that falls upon the people of that community. And to try to offload that to state actors is just a bad recipe for disaster. The old saying is when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. And that's not a dig on police. It's just, unless you want a police officer in your house and on every street corner, which I don't want to live in such a police state. I don't want to look around and see police vehicles everywhere like a third world country. Right. I'll take my gun and I'll defend myself, thank you very much. And then if I need the state, I'll call the state. I'll dial 911 and say, hey, give me some assistance. But when it comes to, immediately dealing with that problem, that really should not be frowned upon when the citizens decide to step up and do that. There's nothing wrong with that in a free society.
But you know what's interesting, Tim, and this is something that, just kind of jumped in my brain while you were just going through that. It's not always criminals that you have to have a Second Amendment right for. Sometimes you can be in the front yard or the backyard and a snake is near your child. Sometimes animals go rabid. Sometimes pack of dogs roam. Sometimes you run into a bear in the woods on a hike. I'm not suggesting that you have to have a gun on you every 24 hours, every second of every 24 hours. That's your own decision. That's your thing. But at the end of the day, you have an ability to affect your environment and protect what's important to you, and you don't necessarily have to assign the worst case scenario of a criminal. You could just assign bad circumstances happen to bring into your door, and how do you handle that? You have a tool if you need it, but you don't have to use it.
Right.
That's a huge point that people just simply, a lot of times, don't think about.
Well, that's just it. A firearm is just a tool. It's not a good or bad tool. It's indifferent. It has no ill will. It has no implied meaning or use. People say, well, that's designed to kill. No, it's actually designed to expel a projectile out the end of the barrel. What you do with it is up to you, right? The gun has, no free will. So yes, it's just a tool, and carrying a tool is prudent. Do you carry a pocket knife? Do you carry a flashlight? When you go to fix something, do you grab a toolbox? Well, that's because tools are useful. And being able to defend yourself is probably one of the most important tools you may have. Chances are you'll never need it, but that's a good thing.
Right. That's the entire point.
Right.
The entire point is you are blessed in this nation to have these rights that many other nations don't have. And I'm not just talking about the Second Amendment. I'm talking about the First Amendment and all of the other Bill of Rights. But the important piece that you have to understand is just because you aren't using it right now does not mean it's not important. You have it there in case you need it. That's a crucial piece that a lot of people on the left just simply say, well, I'm not using that right now, so I don't need it, and therefore you don't need it, and it'll be a more utopian society if we don't have it.
Right. It kind of reminds me of an incident from decades ago. Lubby's, I just bring this up because I just drove through Texas and I saw a Lubby's Cafe, and it reminded me of a story again that's quite old, but this is before Texas had concealed carry. And a lady went into the Lubby's restaurant with her family, her father and her mother, I believe, and the law at the time didn't allow for her to carry a firearm, and she didn't want to carry one into the restaurant, so she left it in her vehicle because she wanted to be compliant with the law at the time. Well, a madman drove a vehicle through the front of the restaurant, jumped out and started shooting everybody. Her parents were killed, and she went before Congress and testified, if I was just allowed to have my gun, I had the opportunity. I could have ended that before anybody was hurt. And again, she left her tool in the car because of a BS state law that said you must be a victim. You will not be allowed, citizen, to defend yourself. Wrong. It's a basic human right to be able to defend yourself. And when the state denies that right, It's just wrong. So I applaud these folks. They need to go out there and do their community policing. Now, you do have to be aware of it. I'm not telling you to go out and do it yourself. That's up to you. We're not giving legal advice. But, there are, circumstances in which you could find yourself in trouble in that. So you do have to be careful, right? Especially in a blue state where they're going to try to charge you with something no matter what, right or wrong in your actions. And so just be careful if you're going to go out there and do that. But I am all for community policing. I think it's something that needs to be, condoned in this country. So,
right. I'm 100%.
Yeah.
100% down. I think we put a good bow on that, Tim.
Yeah.
I think that was good.
So let us know in the comments. What do you think about community policing? Do you support the actions of these folks? Would you do it yourself? Have you done it yourself? Let us know. Perhaps there's some discussion points in your comments for a future video. Also, if you'd like to be on the show, a great way to do that is to follow the link in the video description. Fill out a questionnaire. We'll get you on the show. We'll have a great conversation around whatever 2A issue you'd like to talk about. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you guys soon.